Anthony, how you doing, man?
John, great.
So we started this business, the Career Caddie, and no one's ever heard of it yet because it's brand new. So I thought maybe we'd just take a minute to kind of introduce people to what we're doing and what initially got you excited about the idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I came up with the idea of the Career Caddie. One, I didn't come up with the name, so I got to be full transparency here. My wife did, because I don't actually play golf. And so I would never have come up with this name, but I think it resonates well because when I learned more about what a caddy does for a golfer, I thought it was like, this is great for a professional, especially somebody coming out of public accounting, to have somebody kind of whispering into their ear and directing them on their career path. So the reason I came up with the Career Caddie, or the origin of the business, was just kind of a buildup of my professional experience over the last 15, 17 years. I started my career in public accounting. I did both audit and tax, and I'm still recovering. I'll be honest. I personally did not enjoy doing audit and tax, but I saw the value of the experience in public accounting and audit and tax and the professional get in a public accounting firm. But I wanted a position in a professional career that was going to be way more interacting with professionals and actually probably helping them with their career. And so I quickly moved into HR. And so I have a background in campus recruiting for one of the big four accounting firms. I worked for a global executive search firm, helping big four accountants leave public accounting and go into industry. And then I started my own search firm. And then I found my way into academia, and I was a professor at two universities, Baylor University and SMU.
Yeah, Sick 'em Bears.
Yes, Sick 'em Bears. That's where we met.
Yeah.
And my wife and I wanted to get back to Dallas, and so I transferred up to SMU. And then most recently, I was at Toyota North America, and I had the opportunity to lead an executive succession plan for North America. And so that was a great experience. And so I took my experience with, public accounting, recruiting, executive search, and now leadership development. And I came up with this idea that, gosh, it's not unusual, and it's very socially acceptable for executives to have coaches, if you will, even a caddy. But nobody really thinks about having younger professionals having that intentional coach or caddy to help guide them through their career. And that's such an integral and important part of somebody's career early on in defining where they want to go. Yeah. And we have lots of questions, right? I know I had lots of questions early in my career, and I didn't really know who to turn to or ask for guidance. And so I thought, hey, there's a real opportunity and a need. And so I jumped in. Yeah.
And just so people know, it ties into how Anthony and I met because, I was at Baylor in the accounting program. I was kind of a confused accountant. I had a lot of different interests. I realized it became evident that Anthony was kind of the go-to for career counseling within the Baylor accounting department. So not only myself, but a ton of other, of my classmates would always go to Anthony for advice. Anthony and I kept in touch and became good friends. But people still have not stopped going to Anthony for advice. It just goes to show, there is a lot of people are wondering, who can I talk to about how to transition in my career? What if, there's a ton of questions and we're going to get to some of them later, but having that experienced person to kind of bounce back and forth, it's very evident that there's a need for it. So yeah, Anthony's kind of the rock star in that realm.
Yeah. Well, and John, you probably have one of the most interesting and fascinating careers early in your career as well. And so, tell us about kind of your journey early in your career right now and what you're doing, how you got here to the Career Caddie.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I started out in Big Four. So went to KPMG, and then I actually started working at a Dallas firm after that called MCG, Montgomery Kasha Greilich. I've always been, very analytical, and that's why I chose accounting, and I enjoy auditing, but I also had all these other interests. So I had music production as an interest. I had these things that were not very profitable, but I loved to incorporate them into my life. So actually Anthony kind it was a sounding board for me as I tried to design a career that allowed me to combine multiple interests. So although I was putting in the hours and the busy seasons in public accounting, I also was able to eventually kind of come up with a flexible work schedule where I actually did music production some of the time and I did accounting. But so I went to Montgomery Kosher Greilich and I worked at PwC and kind of the financial services department. And I eventually, I had a contact at a company in Houston called Tramontina, where I actually went into business strategy, and that was exciting for me because I always wanted to kind of leverage accounting into doing something more operational, strategic. And so, I worked with the CEO and kind of the VPs at Tramontina to help improve some of their business processes. They started a little bit traditionally structured, and so they wanted somebody a little bit younger to kind of help bring some feedback. And then that kind of organically transitioned into me doing the marketing for them as well. So that's most recently is I've kind of I've been working with Google and creative agencies and Amazon on creating strategic campaigns where it's more consumer focused, and that's where now Anthony and I where we linked up recently is using some of that that marketing knowledge and mostly it's just the consideration of the consumer. I feel like is the main value there. So I think we're both passionate about bypassing some of the red tape and some of the structured nature that is a barrier between us and the consumer, right?
Right.
So I think now that's the beauty of now at Career Caddie, we're able to kind of reach to the people that we identify with or empathize most with and serve them. So so that's where we are now.
Yeah, it's exciting. You're right. I think really at the heart of the Career Caddie is just really getting information out to people who are just like you and I who have a story of starting in public accounting and say, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Right. I think we can all agree that the majority of people who start off in public accounting don't stay in public accounting for one reason or another. But they don't really have a plan. It's the first time in your life that when you decide to leave the firm, it's the first time in your life you really have to think, okay, what's next? What's the chapter going to look like? And you get to write it and you get to own it. And that's true not only when you leave the firm, but that's true in any professional career you have. You always have to own your own career development. Totally. Yes, companies and firms put a lot of resources to it, but at the end of the day, they have an agenda, and you need to have an agenda as well. And otherwise, you'll just kind of go with the wind. And so, Career Caddie is about, hey, own your career, own your development, and have a plan so that you can, grow and reach your kind of career aspirations and professional and personal goals.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're in accounting, there's a path, right? There's a structured path. And a lot of the times it's by default. So, if you're in the accounting department or in the program at university, you're kind of encouraged to pursue either a Big Four firm or kind of a reputable public accounting firm in your area. And, once you get into public accounting, there's also a very clear kind of progression where, especially, I was in audit, so you're an associate, you're an experienced associate, you're a senior, and if you're not careful, you can just do whatever comes by default. So you either just take the next promotion, or you take the offer of one of your clients wants to hire you, or a random recruiter reaches out and you say that sounds good. So I think Career Caddie, we really want to help you design something intentionally that gets you the best out of your career, so you don't have to wait for the default.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So we got some questions. Anthony gets a ton of questions from people wanting his advice. And, these are some of the common questions that a lot of us that either in public accounting or wanting to leave it or not sure what to do. These are a lot of the questions that we're asking. So I'm going to kind of tee up some of these, and I'm going to pretend like I'm one of your clients, Anthony.
Right.
And okay. So one of the first things that's on everyone's mind, which it's kind of funny because people ask this when they start working in public accounting. When's the best time to leave public accounting? The time of year, how many years of experience, anything else to consider. When's the best time to leave?
Oh, that's a big question. You're right. I get that question asked all the time. I asked it myself, and I'll tell my story first because it was like, I think it still holds true today. This kind of, it's like this unwritten guideline or rule that people kind of get fed when they go into public accounting is, I was told, okay, I can't think about leaving until I make manager. Mm-hmm. Right. That was back in 2003 when I started my career in public accounting. And that's what my managers and performance managers and, partners told me is like, if you're going to leave, you can't leave until you make manager. Otherwise, you're not going to be as successful or the opportunities aren't going to be as great. And what I found quickly, especially after I left, is, it's not that black and white. Right. There's a lot of gray. And there's a lot of depending on your goals and where you're trying to go. And so, that's one of the things I want to tell people because when I get asked that question, they expect me to just follow up with an answer like, oh, how many years have you have? Or, what experience do you have? Okay, and it's now time to leave. And that's not the case. It's more of my follow-up questions are, well, what's your career aspirations? What are your goals? Where are you trying to get to? Yep. Have a plan. And then once you have a plan, then you can say, okay, when's the best time to leave? And so I give an example. So I left after 2.5 years in public accounting, but I left for a career that was totally out of accounting. I went into recruiting and HR. Yeah. And so what I decided was, if I stay another year, what experience am I going to gain that helps me with my next career move? Yep. And there wasn't any, I was moving totally out of accounting and into recruiting. And so even if you stay in accounting or finance, that's the same kind of guideline I would put to anyone is saying, okay, where are you trying to go? And does this experience help you get to that next level? And so I would tell people, because the truth of the matter is, even if you stay in accounting, the longer you stay in public accounting, the less opportunities there are to leave, right? Because you got to factor in, you're now in a higher salary band. You have a very specialized skill set within accounting and a specialty. And so your exit opportunities have to meet those experiences and background and salary requirements. And if you're trying to broaden or expand your experience or try something new, even if it's in accounting, a lot of these organizations are not willing to give you those opportunities because, one, you come with a higher price tag, and two, if you're at a manager or director level, they need somebody who's really got that expertise. Yep. And if you don't, it's like it's not the right fit. And so I always tell people it's like, it's a case by case situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I've seen people that they intend on staying kind of indefinitely. They don't have a plan, but they get a great offer when they're a senior associate after 3 years at a firm. Like I had one guy who I knew at MCG. He got an offer to be a CFO for a small kind of oil company after 3 years with equity in the company, and obviously, I mean, he's not going to grind out another couple years in public accounting just because to hit a checklist. If an opportunity arises, you get as much experience as you need to get the opportunity that you want to have, right? So it does depend completely.
Yeah. And I always tell people because some people if public accounting is where they want to be and they want to be on large clients and publicly traded clients, a lot of times it's stay at your current firm or move to a larger firm, or if you want to stay in public accounting but maybe you're looking to be with smaller clients, more regional based or private, maybe you move down in size of firm, maybe you go from a big four down to a regional or a national firm. And so it just comes down to, like I said, what's your career plan, what's your career path, and then that's what I would say drives when you leave public accounting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. So the next question is kind of already hit, and that's kind of what kind of experience and milestones should I hit? The only thing I feel like we've already covered that. I mean, in my opinion, you probably need you just need like at least one busy season, right? Like as far as like if you're in tax or audit, I mean, you kind of measure experience a lot by busy seasons. Is that right? Would you say if you're in public accounting, you need to hit 1 or 2 busy seasons as milestones?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like when you think about leadership development and executive leadership development, you measure your growth based on skills and exposure and experience, right? But in public accounting, early in our career, we seem to measure ourselves based on time, right?
Right.
Like, oh, what's our tenure? So I need to do 1 busy season or 2 busy seasons. So with our clients, I'm always trying to get them into a mindset of like, let's talk about those busy seasons, but let's talk about more about exposure and experience and skills.
Totally.
Because that's what you're going to be able to sell to a potential opportunity, hiring manager.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the big milestones to look at.
Yeah.
But you're right. Let's be honest. You come in your first year in public accounting or really any job, and your first year, you're just kind of figuring out where the restrooms are.
Right.
Where's the copy machine? And if you can remember your passcode, for the copy machine. And so, and then your second year, you really kind of get, the air under your wings and you're starting to make some, an impact. And so, if you leave too early, you just don't have a lot of value that you can add to your next opportunity, because you're just barely learning the system, and so I always tell folks if you can hang on at a minimum, 2 years should be kind of your milestone, unless you kind of wake up one day and say, I don't want to be in accounting. I want to totally get out, or I want to try something different. You wake up and say, I want to be in a pure finance role or marketing or, something else. Then you're right. Then there's not a whole lot of reason to justify for you to stay any longer than a year.
Sure.
But if you're not sure, you're not going to hurt yourself by sticking around a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I always liked, forget where I heard this quote, but it was, never run away from something, but always run to something. As cheesy and cliche as that is, I think it applies because a lot of us just want to get the heck out of there, right? But if we don't have a plan, then, it could be a little risky. If you don't know where you're going, you just want to get out of there.
Right.
Okay, so
you always have people who, we're very risk averse, right? Public accountants are risk averse, type A,
right?
And so I always tell people though, with our skill set and background in public accounting, we should have the highest risk tolerance because you can always go back into a public accounting firm, right? The needs right now in public accounting, are extraordinary, right? They're always looking for talent. And that's been the case. I mean, as long as I've been in my professional career, they've always said that. And so I always have friends or colleagues who left the firm and come back, they go to experiment. And so I always tell people like, look, this is your chance to explore, and if you make a mistake, it's really not a mistake because you can come back. You probably come back more valuable. Your career might be accelerated in public accounting. You have a different perspective and lens that you look at the work, and you just become more valuable to the team and to your client. And so, I always tell people like if you really think you want to leave but you're just not sure, you're anxious or apprehensive, you're not going to lose a lot if you do, because you can always come back.
Yeah, I'm case in point there because I left public accounting. I was getting really into music production. So I went the licensing route where I was selling songs for film and TV. And I wanted to pour some fuel in the fire. So I left public accounting and I did that for like, I think it was about 9 months or something just to give it a go. And then, I was still able at the end of those 9 months, I wanted kind of to, refill my savings and I wanted to actually get more experience. And I was contacted by PwC. And, I went into they have a flexible talent network program where you can work a busy season and then the rest of the year you can do whatever you want. And you just get kind of, you get paid hourly during busy season. So you're going to kind of save up a lot of your income and crunch it into that 4 months. And then I was able to leverage that experience into a full-time offer for PwC. And so, it didn't hurt my chances that I took some time off, even to do something as seemingly ridiculous as music production. they actually found it more interesting. And as long as the value, like what you were saying, you can bring the value when you're there, man, I mean, you're not going to have to worry about finding a job if you're valuable, right? So I think you're totally right on that. Here's another interesting one that I think is uncomfortable to talk about for some people with their colleagues at public accounting is they feel like they're lacking purpose. They feel like, they're grinding, they're doing, tax work and audit work that, they don't really care about because they need the experience. And so a lot of people have that, they feel like they're missing purpose in public accounting and they want to find something, they can't just jump into being a painter, they have skills, they need to make an income. They maybe want to stay in business, or finance related fields, accounting related fields. What do you tell people when they're feeling like they're lacking purpose in public accounting and they're wanting to look for something tangential, but more purposeful?
Yeah. Gosh, John, I get asked that a lot. I think when I meet with clients, people coming out of public accounting, I always ask them kind of what are their must-haves? What do they enjoy most about their current opportunity? What do they, enjoy the least with their current opportunity? What are they looking for? And I would tell you probably the top two I always get is either something around work-life balance and then two, purpose, right? They're just like, I just want something that's a little more purposeful. And I totally relate. I remember when I was in public accounting, working those late nights or, be 6 p.m., you're kind of looking out the window and you see everybody leaving from other companies and other industries leaving, the parking garage. It's like, man, what are they doing? When they get to go off and have dinner with friends and, volunteer in the community. And so I always tell people, purpose, really at the heart of it, when you dig deep, it's not that they necessarily need their work to be purposeful. I think we default to that and say, I need a job that, is going to make a difference in somebody's life. And, in a perfect world, you get that and you find that. But most people's jobs don't change somebody's lives, and have an impact at that level. And so what I say is, kind of build your job, your career, that it allows you to have a purposeful life, So what I've seen is like a lot of, especially young, early in your career, right? You're just starting off, you're putting in the hours. Let's be real. In public accounting, you can work a lot of hours. In accounting, you can work a lot of hours. And so find an organization that's going to allow you to have purpose externally, right? Outside of the firm, because that goes with you. Wherever organization you go to, you're going to have that purpose, whether it's involvement in the community, involvement in a social scene of friends and family. And I think that's at the heart what people are asking when they say, I want more purpose. It's not necessarily, they have to have their job giving them that. But what happens is they're not necessarily having purpose outside of their job because they're working a lot and they don't have that work-life balance. Yeah. And then their job is not as exciting or giving them that purpose. And so they're not getting it anywhere. Yeah. And you see a lot of, to be fair, there are a lot of firms and a lot of organizations, they're doing everything they can to help that. Yeah. To give that, allow for that. And if you're in an organization that's not allowing for that, ask. And so I'm going to throw this back at you, John, because you've experienced this, right? You just kind of, you alluded to in your intro, like what gives you purpose is, the ability to kind of like work with your music and your writings. And so how did you manage that in your career? What did you do? And how did you get the firm to help you with that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a kind of a big question and it's really, it's a great one. I think for me, I always had to carve out my outlet. So, I always had to have, I had to carve hours out of the day, or even if it's just 1 hour, 30 minutes, I had to do something that I really felt was purposeful, or a creative outlet, or something meaningful. So, there was one period of time where I was waking up at 4 a.m. and doing music production for 2 or 3 hours before I would leave for work. And obviously that wore me out eventually, but I was also really invigorated by doing that because, having something where, you zoom out and you say, hey, at the end of the day, I'm in control of whether I stay at this company. I'm at control, and if I'm in control, if I stay at this company, it has to make sense, right? And so you start to kind of frame it in a way that makes you realize that it actually is your best alternative at the time. And if it's not, you change it. But if it is, it gives you a lot more contentment to be there. So if you're just, if you're just complaining to yourself and saying, oh man, I'm just stuck, I can't get out of public accounting, you're going to be unhappy. But if you say, hey, like for me, I stayed for a few reasons. One, I developed relationships with the people I worked with, and that made it, that actually made it purposeful, is kind of having these relationships and friendships. Like at PwC especially, I had a great colleagues, and I actually did enjoy learning about hedge funds and kind of the financial services aspect of things. And so I think it's just a choice of mindset in deciding, hey, I'm here, this is great experience, this is going to help me build skills that are going to carry forward, like the analytical, the leadership skills, the relational skills, and just the pure professionalism that I learned at Big Four, I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. And so I think it's just a mindset shift. If you're in control, and then you're also deciding, hey, if I want to have a purpose, if I want to add purpose through these creative outlets, I'm going to do it. I think you're going to be happier because you don't feel helpless.
Yeah. Right. Well, and talk kind of even more practical, like, so when you left Big Four and you went to that local firm, I remember you calling me and you were asking me for guidance, and you said, I really like to have some more time to work on my music. And I remember you said, this whole getting up really early or staying up really late was wearing on you. And you said, how can I make this work? And I remember I threw this out to you and I said, why don't you ask the firm for a part-time schedule?
Yep.
And you were kind of like, what? Because I mean, you were a second year associate, right?
Yeah.
When you were there.
Yeah.
And so you were like, they're not going to give me a part-time schedule. And I said, look, you're a top performer.
Yeah.
You're really sharp. You're really dedicated. You get your work done. You probably do it faster than the average employee. And so I said, the firm's invested, in having you stick around, and having you part-time is better than having a below average employee full time, right. And so tell us kind of that experience you had, kind of how did that go when you asked for it? Yeah. One, tell us what you thought when I told you that this should be the answer, to go ask the firm for a part-time schedule, but then also tell us how that kind of worked out.
Yeah. I mean, immediately I was excited by the idea because since you suggested it, I was like, this is possible. Like, really? I can do that? But at the same time, it was equally just terrifying.
Yeah. Right. And I had no idea. I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, it's your career. It's not mine. So if it messes up,
Right. Exactly. Just whatever. Yeah. Just report back and tell me what happened. No. Yeah. It was terrifying. And, so it was really funny too, because the day I finally got the courage, I kept postponing it, and I got the courage to ask. I walked to the partner's office, and then I walked right back around, and I went back. I did one of the little spins, and it took me.
It's interesting that everybody's so afraid to go talk to the partner, even though, like, I remember at every firm I've worked at, they've always like, oh, partners open door policy, come talk to us. Yeah. Like, no, talk to the partner.
No,
they're real people.
They're real people. So I was terrified because, like you said, I'm not a senior associate. I'm not a manager. I'm a second year associate, right? I have a lot less clout. So when I went into her office and to talk to her, and this partner in particular was, I felt like she was very nice and kind, but she's also very professional, and it's a public accounting firm. This isn't Facebook or something, So, so when I talked to her, I basically I was pretty real about it, and I'm sure my voice was shaking and I was whatever. But I basically just said, hey, I like this firm. I'm really grateful for the opportunity you guys have given me. I really am passionate about music, and I want to spend more time on it. And it's not working how it is. And so I don't want to leave the firm, but I'm wondering if there's something I can do to create, maybe work. I think I threw out there 20 hours a week initially. So that was kind of my initial anchor. And
that's great.
Yeah. And initially she responded, she's like, well, I don't think we can do 20, but maybe 30 hours a week. And I was like, what? I mean, 30 hours a week compared to what, 50, 60, it's amazing. And so she told me, I'll get back to you. And finally they agreed, and I was shocked. And, it was a moment I realized, I was like, you can kind of design things, right? You can kind of poke them and change them, even in a field like public accounting, where you all of us just picture it as like one of the most rigid professions out there. It just goes to show how much say you have in designing your career if you're being valuable to the firm. Like, it has to be in their best interest as well.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And that's a huge point you just said. And, two things. One, you want to, there's a book out there called So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Yeah.
Right. You want to be so good that your firm, your organization can't ignore you, and they're willing to help you out. Right. So and I think a lot of times when we're not happy with our job or our situation, we have a tendency to kind of shut down or don't put our full effort. Yeah. And then what that does, it doesn't give the organization or supervisor kind of the reason to help us out or support us. And so I always tell people, like, give it your all, perform at the highest level, do everything you can to meet the company's needs. And then whenever you need something, they're more apt to help you out. Right. Yeah. So the first thing is be so good they can't ignore you. That's a book, actually. Yeah. And then two is ask, right? And so we're going back, and I know we'll say this a lot, right? I talk about owning your own career.
Yep.
If you don't ask for it, the organization doesn't know what you need, right? And to help you. And so your performance manager, your supervisor, your partner is not sitting in their office saying, hey, I wonder what John really needs. What would make him happy or productive, And so if you go and ask them, that gives them an opportunity to help and to, create a situation. And that's what you experienced, right? They figured it out, and they probably changed their firm policy on how they do flex schedules,
But it opens some doors there.
Yeah. And then if it doesn't, if they come back and you say no, or they say no, well, now okay, well, maybe I need to find another organization that will allow me to do this, and no harm there, right? It's a part of, work and career is going to allow you to have that balance. And so, I always tell people, go and ask. And then if you don't get the answer you want within if your request is in reason, and you're performing well, then find an organization that will, because there's a lot of opportunities out there.
There are. And I think what's, at least for me, what served me well during public accounting is, I was never desperate for the job. Like, I always felt confident that, like, if it didn't work out, I could find something else. And so, when I told them that, I didn't want to leave the firm, but I basically kind of like implied that, I would leave the firm. I actually meant it, and I didn't mean it threateningly. I meant it, hey, like, I don't want to leave. Like, I will if I can't combine these, but can we work together so I can stay? And I feel like you're coming from a position of strength there if you're confident in yourself, that, you really can find another organization if you need to,
Right.
Okay. So this kind of relates. Another question people ask is, if I'm looking for another job, right? I'm ready to leave public accounting. Do I need to, am I stuck with accounting only, or do I have the option to kind of transition to something tangential? What if I want to go to private equity? What if I want to go into finance, operations? Am I stuck in accounting after public accounting? And within industry?
The short answer is no. It's actually funny when you say, when you finally decide to leave public accounting. I think we can all relate to this, but that's actually a journey.
Yeah.
For people to kind of come to the state of mind that they're ready to leave, right? Because it's something you've known probably for your career, right? You've gone all through college. You've got an internship your junior year, most likely. You start with the firm. You haven't really thought of anything different, and now you're at a point where, should I leave? And so it causes a lot of anxiety with people.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny because I'll talk to somebody, about, the opportunity, the exit opportunities, their career plan. And then, if they're in public accounting, they it's like they go dark for like 60 days.
Yeah.
And then they come back. I'm ready to get out, right? It's like it has to soak in that do this, right?
Right.
Maybe they talk to enough people and say, oh, I can still have a successful career, right? Because there's so many forces that are that battle there, right? There's the firm telling you that, oh, you're not going to be successful if you leave. There's your thoughts on what success looks like, and then there's this lack of awareness of opportunities that are out there. But it's funny because you think about, just in the finance and accounting function, most people came from, public accounting, and these are executives, vice presidents, CFOs, VPs of finance that, came from public accounting that eventually left. And so I always tell people like, I understand the anxiety and the journey it takes to get somebody to get to that point where they say, okay, I'm ready to leave.
Yeah.
But that's normal. But you can and you will have a very successful career, whether or not you stay in a firm or you leave. And so I say that because one of the things I wanted to lead into is we don't do a good job, and universities don't do a good job of prepping students to learn and search for careers, right? Especially in accounting departments, right? They just help you get your accounting internship, and after that, you're done, right? You're taken care of. And so what I want to encourage people is like, you should always be connecting, with people of interest, right? You name it. And so, every time I meet with a candidate that wants to talk about their career or think about leaving, I encourage them, like, gosh, you have so many individuals that you can be meeting with to learn about what's in an industry, whether it's people outside of your engagement team. Don't ever only just have lunch or dinner with your engagement team. Take one day a week and have lunch with somebody on the clients that you serve. And whether they're in the accounting or finance function, or maybe they're in marketing, or maybe they're, in sales or something else that you think you may have an interest in, and then go do that same thing with people outside of the firm, outside of your clients. And that's, I think, a big first step of kind of understanding what's out there and how to even get out of your field if you're wanting to transition out. And so I know when your question was, if you want to get out of accounting, are there opportunities? And the answer is yes. But you have to work at it, and you have to network, you have to rebrand yourself, your LinkedIn profile, your social media profile, your resume, anything that you have as a brand has to be rebranded to the direction of industry and type of career you want, And so I left public accounting. I went into HR and, recruiting specifically. And then most recently I found myself in leadership development, and so I had to totally transform, my brand.
Yeah, definitely. And it's step by step, right? So it's, you don't just go from being an accountant to, being a marketer, but, or a COO or something, you have to kind of find that path. But I was going to say too, relationships are really key to finding opportunities like that. And especially relationships within your firm, because what's scarce is trust. When you're switching to a whole different company and you want to change positions, unless you really try at it, you're going to be thought of as an accountant at first, unless you do your job right. So sometimes the better opportunities, if you want to transition, is find something within your firm that helps with that transition. So, if you're at a Big Four firm and you want to be in more consulting role, talk to the advisory, segment of your company and try to see if you can get into advisory within your same firm, because you already are trusted. If you're doing a good job, you have a track record, you're not in like outside hire. And, that can be a really easy first step into transitioning into something else.
Yeah, John, that's great, kind of advice there, because I've seen that so many times with, friends or candidates that come to me and say, I want to get in, they're in audit or they're in tax, and they're like, I want to get into more of a finance role. Or I've had somebody say, I want to get into marketing, and I always tell them the first thing is like, look internally, right? Like, look at your firm and ask. If you're a top performer, the firm may let you do a special project or rotation. When I started and I moved in, and that was a scary thought for me. I was going to leave the audit practice the firm asked me to move into campus recruiting. That was scary because I thought, gosh, this is a total career change. I'm going into recruiting. What if I don't like it? But it was in a safe place, right? The firm, allowed me to go in there. And if I decided, 6 months, a year from then, or 5 years from then, that wasn't the right move, I could move back into the practice.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always tell people, like, look internally. But I'll be honest. Like, I understand that there are challenges to move into these practices, right?
Yeah.
But I always ask people, if you're a top performer and you're an audit and tax, the tax department, the audit department does not want to let you out, right?
True.
They want to keep their practice.
True.
But I would say start there and ask. And if you can't get out, and they're not letting you, because they need you, they need that talent in that practice, then look at another firm.
Yeah.
I've seen so many of candidates that I coach who are, they've left their firm to another firm that's opening the doors for them to go in those advisory practices, and getting the experience they want and launching their career in a new direction.
Right.
And so it's just be open-minded, but ask, I always tell people, ask the firm, because you would be surprised what opportunities they'll allow you to do internally. And then again, if they can't give it to you, kind of your experience at, getting a flex schedule, then you look at another firm or another organization.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice. Okay, so next question is on work-life balance. That's one of the top things that public accountants want, especially as obviously it's kind of a response to the beating you take sometimes during like these busy seasons where sometimes you're working 100 hours on a crazy week, or and so people don't want that on their next gig. They want to find something that still advances their career, but they want to see their wife on the weekend. They want to go out with their friends. They want to be able to, maybe take a weekend trip without feeling guilt tripped. So how do they get more work-life balance? What kind of roles or industries lend themselves to that post public accounting?
Yeah. Actually, public accounting and industry both lend themselves to it, but you just might have to reshape kind of what type of organization you can work at, right? And so when you think, let's just take public accounting in general, there are certain practices at the larger firms that allow for more work-life balance, and maybe you just have to ask for those practices, and see if you can get transferred into those, as well as, getting on clients that maybe aren't publicly traded. Maybe they're private clients, and so those come to typically are going to have a better work-life balance, more smoother hours throughout the busy season, and predictable. But then, if you really enjoy kind of the service industry and public accounting, middle tier and local firms are phenomenal for providing that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And you'll look at a lot of them are former, global firm partners that have gone down because they wanted that, or they were seeking that work-life balance.
Definitely.
And then it's really a function of the type of clients you're serving, right? If you're serving, publicly traded global companies, there's a higher demand on your ability to be available when they need you and for the work product. You go to a smaller firm, they're going after a different client, and that allows for them to have a more manageable work-life balance. So that's just within public accounting. But then when you leave and you look at industry, most industry jobs, again, it's kind of the same kind of rule of thumb. If you're going to a large global publicly traded, firm or organization, they're going to have pretty demanding hours as well, especially during, if you're in the operational accounting side, during month-end close, financial reporting, during deadlines and that nature. But if you go to a private company, I have so many, former colleagues and friends that are, that have phenomenal careers. They've progressed up to the executive level. They're at these private companies, making on par or sometimes even more than their counterparts in publicly traded companies, and they're living the dream. They got this great life balance. And so I think that's available. And how do you navigate that on the front end, and not find a position that's gonna put you, jeopardize that work-life balance as you ask.
Yeah.
I know in accounting, that's often the standard intern questions, like, what's work-life balance? And firms do their best to give you, responses and to their fairness. I mean, there's only so much they can control, but if you're on a public audit for a large global company or, doing tax for a large global company, they can't control the demands of the client as much. But, you go into industry, I tell people when you're interviewing, ask, and say, what's an average work week look like? Give me an example of what people do, outside of the office. And if it looks like they have, a life outside of the office, if they're seeing their wife or their husband, not just on the weekend, and they're involved in their kids or in the community or, with their friends, then you'll find that, hey, this is probably a place that, has a great work-life balance.
Yeah, that's a great point. Don't believe what people say. Look what they do sometimes, right? Or
exactly.
So, and it's hard to do that if you're not working at the firm, but at the same time, you probably have somebody you know and trust that works at one of these firms and that you can ask the honest advice, like, are the partners or say you want to be a senior associate, what do you do the rest of the year? What are you doing in June? What are you doing in July? And you just kind of get a picture of them, because sometimes, it just depends. Like at the local firm I was at, you would think that the local firm would have a more work-life balance, and it did, obviously, for me, because I kind of was able to request and design that. But some people actually ended up getting different engagements that went year round, and so they had a really bad work-life balance. But you wouldn't really know that until you got into the nuances of it within a discussion and you asked. The worst time to ask about work-life balance is when one of the public accounting firms are recruiting you. Like that's like, meaning, at every Big Four recruiting event I've ever been to, when I asked about work-life balance, it was always just perfect, right? That's always the response I got, is it's not that bad. And that, that was mostly not the case. So find your source.
And John, and I'm going to do this shameless plug here, and that's why you need a career caddy, right?
Right.
Because, somebody who understands the market and that local market, what companies are doing in business. So, if you happen to go to a firm that's a local firm, but that's on an aggressive growth strategy.
Yeah.
That your work-life balance can, you go in thinking it's going to be one way, and then, 3-6 months, it's totally different, right? And you're back into those 55, 60 plus hour weeks. And it's all because the firm had a growth strategy to double in size or triple in size. And, to do that, it's a function of what's the talent they have right now. And yes, they want to grow that talent and increase it. But if they're not there yet, that means their current talent's going to be putting in the hours. And so having somebody that can coach you through that recruiting process, to ask those questions, or who's already familiar with these organizations in the city that you're looking to find a position, is huge, and it's very valuable. And so it's always, I'll do this plug here, it's always important that you have that kind of coach or that recruiter that is helping you with that and navigate that.
100%. Yeah. Cause you can't know all the nuances of that, just off of one conversation or being on the outside. So let's say a lot of people have different paths and, that they want to go on. Some people want to be a CFO. Some people want to be maybe operations, COO or CEO. They want to go into marketing. Let's just pick one example. Let's say somebody wants to, eventually they want to be a CFO of a public company, right? And they want to leverage their public accounting experience to take that route. What are some things they should consider in their path? How do they get there?
Absolutely. One, you want to consider kind of the size of organization you want to go to, right? Mm-hmm. Is it under 50 million? Is it 50 to 250 million? Is it you're getting over $1 billion organization? And the reason why is because that can help you drive the type of clients you're seeing, right? So if you're, for instance, I was in the real estate practice, right? And if I thought I wanted to be, a CFO of a large $1 billion manufacturing company, I should probably go ahead and start raising my hand and requesting those type of clients.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one. So you want to think about long term, what kind of company and size of clients you want to be on, what industry, right? The same thing. If you're thinking, if you're on manufacturing clients or retail and you're thinking, I really want to be in real estate or oil and gas, well, you'll have a better entry and opportunities for entry points into oil and gas companies if you're coming with client experience already.
Exactly.
Right. Those companies are going to be more apt to hire you if you have industry experience with their industry.
Right.
So that's the second. And then third, you want to make sure if your goal is to be a CFO, that's over all of the finance and accounting function. Mm-hmm. And sometimes at some organizations, it could have, some operations as well as HR rolling up into it. And so you need to start expanding and broadening your experience. And this is where I tell people, like, the longer you stay in public accounting, depending on what your career aspiration is, it could actually hurt you, right? Yeah. So I was just talking this last week to 3 managers and senior managers in public accounting that were looking to leave, and all the positions they keep getting presented by other recruiters is financial reporting or internal audit, senior manager or manager, and I kind of asked them, I was like, well, let's look at these experiences and where you want to go. They all wanted to be CFOs, and I said, what in this next role, either financial reporting or internal audit, is going to really accelerate and expand your skill set that you don't have right now, mm-hmm. right? And so they kind of looked at me and they scratched their heads and like, for the most part, these are slam dunk jobs. I can do all of what's going to be asked of me there. I'm not going to be stretched or grow in any real capacity. And so I said, okay, so you kind of know what a CFO does. You interact with them at your clients. What experience do you need? And they were like, well, I need some operational accounting experience, maybe start to get some treasury experience. And so I said, okay, so if we were going to do a career path for you, a career map on your way to be a CFO, this next move should not be, kind of a lateral move or going backwards. It may need to be kind of an opportunity to go into operational accounting.
Sure.
And it's interesting because a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to do operational accounting. I don't want to do month-end close. But that, doesn't match up with their aspiration to be a CFO, right? Because you're going to be over that. You need that experience. You need that know-how. And so get it the experience, master it early in your career. And so I kind of tell people, like, that's what they should be looking at, is like, let's sit down. Again, a kind of a shameless plug here for Career Caddie. We want to sit down and just kind of walk you through where's your career goals and aspirations, and let's map that out so that now you can filter and the positions you're looking at based on your career path, right? And not just looking at very short term, right? Just your next move. Yes, you're going to get a raise, right? Yes, you're going to get, and potentially, depending on where you are at the firm, a promotion. Yeah. But let's make sure the next move is a high impact move for your career journey.
Exactly. And it really does help to map it out and have some, obviously it's a shameless plug, but it's also you need to do that regardless of if you work with us or someone else, or even if you do it on your own. You need to map out where you want to go and back into that position. So if you want to be CFO, you need to take the steps Anthony mentioned in each step of your career, especially for a position as competitive as CFO. It really does need to be pretty well designed. So it really helps if you have something to go off of there. So Anthony, I think we're kind of narrowing in on an hour now. So you think there's, we have a ton of more questions that we're going to get to in future episodes, but is there anything you think that, any other questions that you've heard that you want to address here?
Well, one is just kind of something that's pretty simple. And it's not a question, it's kind of a challenge and a charge that everybody should be doing, is like this week, starting this week, meet with somebody new outside of your engagement team. Take somebody to coffee, take somebody to ask them, and just kind of learn about their role, their position, even if it's a peer level at your client or it's a level up or two, and just start learning more about what opportunities are out there, what skill sets they need to be successful in their position, and then understand how you can start developing those so that you're going to be more marketable and a better and stronger professional in your career.
That's a great challenge. And I think asking somebody who's already done what you want to do, how they got there. It's one of the most invaluable things. And most of the time it's completely free. It's just a matter of doing it. So why wouldn't you do that? Right.
Great.
Well, thanks, man. I hope this provided some value to people that are working in public accounting, and we're going to go into a lot more questions, and we're probably going to get some interviews, bringing some other people on here that are that have worked in public accounting and then left for something a better opportunity, or maybe they're still working in public accounting and they can provide some insight on how to maximize that experience too. So I think there's a lot of fun stuff coming up, but I'm hoping we help some people get the careers they want.
Awesome.
All right.
Look forward to our next chat. Take
care. Me too. Thanks, everybody.
You bet.